me ducks, it's Simon here. Welcome to the Hermit's Cave. It's great to see so many people already in the chat, chatting away. We're bang on time. I'm just going to pop open the chat on my iPad, just because when people highlight the Hermit's Cave, it shows up on here, whereas it doesn't highlight it in StreamYard. So thank you for being here today. It's so great to see everybody. I'm really, really excited to be doing the interview with this person today, because whilst it's nice to do interviews and make friends, it's quite rare, although it has happened before, where you get to interview somebody that you already class as a friend. And this person, as you can all see from the title screen, Dan from Épine Du Veil, is a friend of mine. He's been here a couple of times now in the Hermit's Cave, and I've known him for just over a year. So without further ado, can we give a Hermit's Cave welcome to Dan? Do you want to say hi, Dan?
Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Nice to see you all here. There's a load of you here as well, so that's quite nice.
There is. There's a lot of people here, which is great. So looks like we've got lots of moderators in the chat as well, so always a good sign, keeping it all safe for us. There is a link to Dan's channel in the blurb below, but again, if one of the moderators could just highlight that and drop it into the chat for people in here so that they can click on your link, that would be great too. So firstly, Dan, have you got a cuppa?
I have got a cuppa. It's here. I'm drinking normal tea.
Normal, what, builder's tea?
Yeah, builder's tea, NATO tea.
NATO tea? Is that some sort of military tea? Is it like
NATO's like tea, milk, sugar.
Oh,
NATO tea.
I've not heard of that expression before. Is it a northern thing?
No, it's definitely a military thing. Definitely a military thing.
All right, it's a military thing. Okay, well, I've got amaretto almond coffee with almond milk, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's the taste of Christmas in a mug, so I'm enjoying that at the moment. What's everybody else drinking in the chat? We all got some nice drinks. They come out every week. They come out with these weird and wonderful flavored drinks and coffees and things. So
why don't you put amaretto into your coffee and make it alcoholic?
Oh, no.
It's like putting Baileys in coffee. It's just be the same.
Yeah, and I have got Baileys in the fridge ready for the Christmas CC&C next week. It was on offer a few weeks ago, and I keep looking at it thinking, oh, that would be lovely in a coffee. But as a rule, I only ever drink at Christmas, holidays, birthdays. You know, if I don't want to be sitting here on my own having a drink. So, and it's only 4 p.m, Dan.
It's cocktail hour somewhere.
Somewhere in the world with somebody watching.
I was drinking at 12 o'clock the other week. I was at the Christmas market and I was drinking Glühwein, but with added brandy. Oh my God.
Oh, wow. Well, Christmas markets, you make an exception. You have to have a Glühwein or a mulled wine, or I've never had it with additional brandy though. But I'm going to Christmas market tomorrow with some friends. We're meeting up at 2 o'clock tomorrow, and I think a Glühwein might be in order. So Starbucks Christmas blend coffee. Twist is just hydrating, so he's having water. And then Caroline from Somewhere in Time Tower says, yes, Dan, Baileys in coffee is the best. I don't know if are you having chat open, or are you just going to focus on the interview?
Here at the side, so I can see. Yeah, well, I think most people can see.
Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm right in saying, aren't I? Firstly, what I do want to say is happy anniversary. I don't know if you're aware or not, but you started your channel 1 year ago today, the 14th.
Really? I knew it was a year ago. I didn't realize it was a year ago today. I knew it was a year ago though, and it was in December last year. I didn't realize it today. That's quite that's a bit of a
significant thing, isn't it? So
yeah, quite good.
And we spoke about interviewing you around the same time. Around the time you started your channel, was like, well, we can do an interview, kind of introduce you to the community, that sort of thing. So it's your 1 year anniversary, but it's also taken a year for this interview to actually actually happen.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. As you'll probably tell us through the interview, there's been a lot happening. You've had a very, very busy year. But we've known each other for just over a year. And I think I'm right in saying that it was probably through the Facebook group, Hermit's Cave Facebook group. I seem to remember you was messaging about putting some holiday pics on and that sort of thing. And
yeah, when I went to Egypt, which was last September, I spammed the Facebook group with pictures of all the different temples that I went to. Like I went to the Temple of Isis, I went to the Komodo Temple, where the mummified crocodiles are. I went to all these amazing temples and just spammed the Hermit's Cave Facebook group with these pictures, knowing that people in the group would appreciate seeing them, and not everyone is able to see these amazing things or go to these places. So I thought I'd show it to people, and it was really cool.
It was really cool, and I was like, yeah, by all means. And Egypt is one of those places that's on my bucket list. So I think that's how we got talking. And then, of course, I did the Hermit on tour last year, and Dan was one of the people who very kindly got in touch with me and offered to be a bit of a tour guide. And we spent a few days together, didn't we? We met in Bath first, and then you showed me around Avebury and Stonehenge, which was amazing. And you lived down there then, didn't you?
I did. I lived in Swindon at the time. Swindon, yeah, well, just outside Swindon, a little town or a little village just outside Swindon. I lived there for a number of years, for a good 10 years in that area, in that county. So I knew it relatively well. I knew Bath relatively well. I knew Avebury, obviously, and I knew Stonehenge. And I've been to all those places before. So it just seems like, pardon me, you wanted to see all these cool places. It just seemed like an obvious choice for me to meet up with you and sort of take you around and show you the places, because it's a bit better having someone that's been there before, I think, that knows the place, than just sort of doing the touristy stuff. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, absolutely. And everywhere I went on that trip, there was such a difference. I mean, I enjoyed all of it, but there was such a difference where I was wandering streets on my own thinking, I wonder what's down there, to actually being with somebody in each of those areas, like Giselle in Glastonbury. It was like, come down this little jitty here. And I was in such good hands, because at the time you was a fully serving cop, weren't you? And you knew all the routes, all the shortcuts, all the places to go. And yeah, so it was a fantastic experience, and it's one that, you know, I treasure. So we've just said you started your channel exactly a year ago today. So can you just talk to us about what was the inspiration behind that, with you wanting to create a channel? What was the inspiration, and have you achieved that yet to date?
So I was a typical YouTube lurker. I lurked around in people's lives. I binge watched different people's videos. I watched Simon at the Hermit's Cave. I watched Avalon Cameron on her channel. And at the time, sort of about 6 months before I started my channel, I was going through a bit of a slump, I suppose you could say, in life. Is probably the best way to describe it. About 6 to 9 months before that, I was going through a bit of a slump in life. I had sort of not left behind, but not really focused on my own spirituality for a number of years. And that was clearly to my detriment. It was really bad. And I just sort of blamed it on work and different things, and I'd slowly started to rediscover my own spirituality, mainly because of Avalon Cameron's channel, and then from there I started like branching off and watching other people's channels. So I started to use tarot again. I started to use oracle again. I started to practice witchcraft again. And things just sort of slowly built up to the point where I started becoming more confident and started messaging people, and it sort of grew from there. And I think it was you that suggested I I go and build or create a channel because my experience is slightly unique from other people's in our community. I know the people sort of come to tarot or to neo-paganism. I'm going to use that term as a big, broad umbrella term. I hope everyone's okay with that. But come to the sort of the spiritual neo-paganistic community from other areas and other either religions or from having different hole in the soul type of situations, whereas I haven't come to our community that way.
Right. Okay. So your channel name is Épine Du Veil as well, because I do want to come on to us talking about neo-paganism, your practice and things like that a bit later on as well. So tell us about the inspiration behind your name. What brought Épine
My
Du Veil?
name is a combination of French and English. Épine de is French, obviously. And when you say it with a French accent, it sounds French. Veil is the English word veil, as in a veil. Épine is the French word for thorn, as in the thorn on the side of a rose. De means of, so it literally translates to thorn of the veil. Now, the reason I decided to call my channel that name, so Thorn has been a nickname of mine since I was 18. Someone once described me in a very endearing, humorous way as a thorn in their side, and the name sort of stuck, and I've stuck ever since. So a lot of my friends know that name outside of the YouTube community, so it made sense to use that. Of the Veil is because I'm born on the 1st of November, so as the veil is at its thinnest. I'm born about an hour into the 1st of November, so just after midnight on Samhain. So the name Thorn of the Veil sort of made sense. And the reason it's half English, half French is because when I started my channel, I was in the process of planning my emigration to France. So that's where the name comes from, really.
Wow. Yeah. And I can remember you and I having a chat kind of about when you were thinking about starting a channel, was talking about some names and things, weren't we? And it just suits you so perfectly. Just want to pick up a question. It's not necessarily aimed at us, but Anna Astral Lady is asking, why are we suddenly using StreamYard? And that's because YouTube doesn't allow third-party broadcasts anymore. You cannot broadcast from YouTube and interview somebody. They stopped and shut down Google Hangout, so that's why we're using this option. And if pictures appear smaller, that's why, you know, when I know Dan's going to be giving an answer, the camera time will be given to Dan, particularly if we start showing cards and things, which will happen a bit later on. So just going back to your channel a little bit then, Dan. So what can people expect if they're here today and they're not familiar with you or your channel and they're going to subscribe to you? What sort of things do you talk about, show, etc.?
So there's unboxings on my channel. I collect tarot and I collect oracle and I like other divination systems. So there's unboxings of decks and things like that on the channel. There's unboxings of witchy supplies and witchy sort of subscription supplies that I get. I subscribe to the Witch's Moon, so I unbox those videos. That's right, I film the unboxings of those boxes. I do book hauls. It's all witchy, spiritual, tarot, esoteric related stuff. It's not quite where I want it to be yet, the channel. There are other things that I want to have on the channel. My most recent 2 live chats, the first one was a bit deep and a little bit not close to the wire, I would say, but could have gone one way or the other when we talked about the divine masculine aspect in the neo-pagan community, and whether that has been pushed aside by the sacred feminine and whether it's gone too far. Could have been quite a controversial topic. Hopefully I did it with enough respect to not offend anyone. And my most recent live was about various other things, but we focused quite a bit on ghosty stuff and sort of paranormal investigations. And that is something that I do want to sort of expand a little bit more on, because I had a lot of experiences. So I do need to, I want to expand a bit more on that as well on my channel. But yeah, there's loads and loads of stuff on there, and it's going to hopefully get better and get more regular content.
Yeah, but it's great content, and it's always fascinating and always interesting, particularly because you have kind of, like you said earlier, a unique or fairly unique, certainly within our online tarot community, perspective, which I think that sort of nicheness, if you like, is a real pull. So you and I'm at a bit of a unfair advantage perhaps to everybody else, because as I said, we are friends and we do talk a lot, and I know quite a lot about your background. But you are somebody who hasn't necessarily come into the practice later in life or most recently. You are somebody who has always had pagan influences and this interest and belief system, if you like. So you class yourself as a witch, and I'm not going to use the phrase male witch. You are a witch. I don't believe in saying male witch or white witch. You know, it's you are a witch. But where did your witchy roots take hold? Can you take us right back and tell us a little bit about your life and upbringing?
So I am very lucky in that I've had a lot of very matriarchal influences in my life, especially from my grandma and my great grandma and an auntie of my grandmother, if that makes sense. We just used to call her auntie, but she was my grandmother's auntie, so like the sister of my great grandmother. So I've always had these like super strong women in and around my life. Now, I suppose the person that's had the most influence would have been my grandma. I wouldn't really describe her as a modern day pagan, I suppose. She focuses and she focused a lot more on folk magic and a lot more on that sort of aspect, the folk knowledge that had been passed through from generation to generation to generation to generation, as opposed to the modern interpretation of witchcraft that was influenced by Gardner. She knew about him and she talked about him when I was a bit older, and I read some of the books by him, and she would basically criticize him and said, you don't need to read these books, you need to go out and experience it. But basically, going back and back and back and back, I remember doing things as a little boy with my grandma. We would make fairy gardens in the garden, in the plant pot, and she would give us crystals to put into the fairy gardens to encourage the fairies to come. We would talk about things like having trees having spirits when we go to the park, and that every living thing has a spirit. And it was always, there was always this undercurrent throughout my upbringing with my grandma of nature worship. I don't know, of respecting nature and nature being alive and nature having a consciousness and nature being, you know, the spirits of these trees and animals and plants being real. And it was just normal. And as a kid, you know, I'd be like, oh no, there's fairies down there. She's like, yeah, I know there is. I know there's fairies down there. Go and talk to them. And she would totally encourage all that. And she used to do various things throughout the year with us. Like on New Year, not the Gregorian New Year, but the Witch's New Year, we would take a lump of coal outside the house. And she said it had to be the eldest male in the house. And after my granddad passed, it was me that did it because I was the eldest male in the house. I'm not sure why it had to be the eldest male. I need to ask her. But I would take a lump of coal out, turn around with the coal 3 times, walk in a circle 3 times, and come back in. And that is about taking all the shit from the year out and bringing the good luck back in. And for anyone that is into crystals and things like that, dark coloured black crystals always have an association of dispelling negativity. And obviously coal has the same associations to get rid of the crap, basically. So there's things like that that we used to do with her. She used to have a set of rune stones and her set of tarot cards. And she also had a little thing to do with, like, she had a little bit of, she incorporated angels into her, I suppose you'd call it her practice. But I mean, you know, she grew up in an era that was very Christian, and she went to church just like everybody else did. So I suppose that's where the angels sort of crept into her practice. But when I was old enough to go to school, I went to a Catholic school because my mum had married a Catholic man. And in the 80s in the north of England, a Catholic education was seen as a very good education. So I went to a Catholic school, and my nan would say, I'd come home and tell her what I'd learned at school, and she's like, that's not actually quite right, it's this way. Or they borrowed it from different people and they've changed it to how they do it, but this is where the original meanings come from. So she would always try and give me two sides of the story. And even now, as an adult, there's nothing better that I find than a good theological discussion. Because if you scratch the surface of every world religion, at their core, they are all the same.
Yeah, totally agree. Or there's that element and that essence, isn't there? It's usually when through the ages, if you can trace things back, where different leaders or prophets, etc., kind of take things down different routes. I found that really, really fascinating. A lot of people were saying in the comments as well about how fortunate you are to have that sort of nurturing and that sort of upbringing. And I find it really interesting because, as I've shared on my channel before, you know, I've got most of my most profound spiritual experiences happened to me as a very small child, up to the age of about 5 or 6. But unlike you, I was told, you know, to kind of, you know, that saying, put away childish things. And children, being close to the veil, you know, coming from a pre-existence or whatever your belief system is, if you believe in reincarnation or a pre-existence, you know, we are not long of this world. So therefore, I do believe that the veil is quite thin for children, and that sort of those experiences should be encouraged. And it's wonderful to hear that when you spoke about fairies at the bottom of the garden or something, that wasn't poo-hooed, and therefore that conditioning starts to happen where we say, well, it can't be real, because as children who are looking all around us for validation on everything, and we're like sponges soaking, you know, and our peers we're told to trust and believe, you had that nurtured, so therefore you didn't automatically shut it down and lose that ability to have that magic in your life.
It was never shut down, ever. Even as a teenager, it was always encouraged. And some weird stuff happened to me when I was a teenager, some really weird stuff, especially when I was around my grandma. It would always happen around my grandma. Some very strange stuff that would happen, but she encouraged me and told me never to hide it, never to shut it down. You know, it's the way that the world is, according to her, and that's how I see the world now.
Brilliant. Such good starting point, such good grounding. A couple of questions that came in. First one was from Becca, who said she'd love to see more live chats, because she really enjoys them, and she was talking about more of a scheduled live chat. Now, I know the reason. Because of your work and your life, you can't always schedule them that rigidly, can you? No,
I work crazy shifts at work. I work 12-hour shifts, and my days at work are generally 14, 15, 16 hours long, including traveling and everything. And I work 4 days on, 4 days off. My shift alternate between day shifts and evening shifts, and it's just a nightmare trying to get. I can't say I will do every Thursday evening, because I can't do every Thursday evening. So it's as and when I'm available. I always try and schedule them, mid-evening when I do them, so that I know the majority of people are available. So I know that in the UK, mid-evening is quite a good time. And I know that like in the US, Eastern Standard Time is like 5 hours behind. So I know that I try and schedule when the people are going to be available. But it'd be great if I could, I mean, never say never, you know, my work situation might change, things might change, and then I can always review it. But yeah, I'd love to do more live chats because I've got a lot to say.
And Buttercup Coffee says, Dan, what do your parents think to how your grandma taught you?
So my mum is absolutely terrified of it. She always has been. Even as a child, she was terrified of it. She was, and I'm not sure why, but my nan, when I talked to my nan about this, so recently my nan gave me some money for Christmas a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh, I'm going to buy this particular tarot deck with it. And I was like, oh, how many decks have you got now? I remember when you made your first one. Don't tell your mother, because you know what she's like. She's absolutely terrified of it. It scares her half to death. You know, she doesn't believe, but we know she's wrong, type of thing. My father, that my mum married, left when I was very little, and she met my stepdad, and he's been around for the last 30 odd years. They finally decided to get married about 2 months ago, my mum and my stepdad, and they didn't tell any of us. They eloped to get married after 30 years. And when they rang up to tell me, I think they were a bit worried how I was going to react. My first thoughts were, well, it's about bloody time. But they all know, you know, they've been to my apartment, they've seen my room, they've seen everything that's over there. They know what I'm like. But I think I'm the only one of my brother and sister, of me and my siblings, that sort of followed this path that my grandma sort of set for us. As my brother and sister have grown older, they've sort of diverged away from it. And I think, I don't know why they have, but yeah, my family, they know about it. It is just what it is. It's part of the family.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's great. That's great. And I think, again, without saying too much or betraying any sort of confidences, but there's probably a reason why your mum is quite scared of it as well, isn't it? Because I think you believe that there's a kind of a hereditary line in terms of certain spiritual gifts that are passed down, and perhaps that fear is born out of that. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, there's things that are very common between me and my grandma, and also my brother and sister have got children. So I'll tell the story. So my grandma sees and talks to spirits all the time, like constantly. I'll go into her house and she's having a natter with someone. And when she was ready, 2 years ago, she was very, very unwell. And I had to rush up north to be at her bedside because my parents were in India. And my mum was like, we're trying to get back. We're not going to be able to. You're going to have to take care of it. And when me and my brother, my sister, and her brother, my great uncle, were around her bed, I said to her, "It's okay now. You know, we're all here. Mum's trying to get back, but you can go." And she'd been unconscious for 3 days. She sat up in bed, looked at me really angrily, and she's like, "I'm not going anywhere. Derek's not here." And Derek was my grandfather, who passed away when I was 10. So she's always seen and talked, and she'll talk to him all the time. It's like I go into the house and she's having a full-blown conversation with him. And I go in and I'm like, I sort of get feelings, and the more I've nurtured it, the more it happens. I didn't know the word for it. I think when I spoke to Simon, it was clairsentience. And it happens all the time. All the time. And my sister's eldest son, he still talks to people at the top of the stairs. He's now 10, and he still has conversations with people who aren't there at the top of the stairs. And that scares my sister, and it also scares my mum. And I think there's this sort of line through our family where we're just open to this. And I think that's what has frightened my mum about things. The fact that, and a lot of it's not just my sister's eldest child. My brother's children have also spoke to people, and all, you know, it's just part of our family, is the way I see it. I think it's just normal.
Yeah, no, I agree. What I wanted to talk about as well, and I know this is something that you've started to talk about on your channel, and I think it's such an important conversation to have, is that witchcraft has, how can I phrase it? Witchcraft has a public image, if you like, which places women at the centre, and that's great. But even when we think about stereotypes, if we think of witch, because of how we're brought up and conditioned through school, you know, the pointy hat, the broomstick, witch brings up that image of females. And again, things like the witch trials, the Salem witch trials, and things like that, you know, punishment against women. So the empowerment of women through witchcraft is really, really important. As a witch yourself, and somebody who clearly isn't female, what sort of experience have you had within the witchy community?
Okay, so I could say so much about this. So I'll sort of touch on each of the areas that you've mentioned. We'll start with the Salem witch trials and like the Pendle witch trials in the UK. The witch trials in that time were all about female oppression and religious persecution. There were men that were prosecuted, but very few and far between, because back then women had no way to protect themselves unless they had a powerful man behind them. And the religious ignorance back in those days targeted these strong-willed, strong-minded, independent women who generally lived on the fringes of the society. They weren't married by 20 and they weren't having children, and they were seen as unusual. So that I could talk about witch trials both in the United States and the UK for hours. And then as the 20th century has rolled on and the pagan or the neo-pagan community has developed, with different people becoming involved and different people being quite outspoken. I mean, the names that we all know, you know, Aleister Crowley, Gerald Gardner, and the way that they changed how magic and how witchcraft, nature worship was seen by the general public, then allowed Wicca especially, which is one branch of witchcraft and its particular religion, for that to develop. And Gardner put the goddess front and center, and that was a great thing for people who were seeking a religion that wasn't patriarchal based and was more matriarchal based. And that was then seized on by feminists, you know, and feminist supporters, as showing that the sacred feminine is so powerful. And it is powerful, you know, it's very powerful. But I think because of that, and then the feminist movement through the late 20th century, the divine masculine got pushed really to the side, almost to a point where it was seen as a bad thing. And I think only now we are trying to address that balance, and it's very difficult. I've been to witchy moots, both in Wiltshire and around in Wiltshire. They meet in pubs, and it's very, very female orientated. And I've almost been shot down when I've made some suggestions, and that's one of the reasons I never joined a local coven, even though I would love to, and have that social aspect about it and that social ritual. It's one of the reasons why I never did, because I felt like being a man in those circles, my opinion was seen as less, and that's not what it should be about. It's supposed to be equal. So I find, and like I said in one of my previous chats about the divine masculine, the pendulum, in my opinion, my humble opinion, has swung too far. And we need to try and bring everything back into equilibrium without it going too far the other way as well, and upsetting another part of our community.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of your practice and well, firstly, are you a solitary practitioner, or I know you just talked about going along to some groups, but do you?
Yeah, I'm a solitary practitioner. I don't really do ritual with anyone else, other than a few close people that I sort of invite, pardon me, into my rituals, or I do rituals with them.
So in terms of the sacred form, as part of your practice? Is that female centric, or is there a balance there in terms of revering any deities or gods or goddesses?
So at the moment, I'm not working with any particular deity. I believe that deities such as Pan or Artemis or Athena or Cernunnos, all these different deities, I just believe they are avataric aspects of the male and female aspects of the divine. And they're only used to allow our brains to process it in a more human way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because if we try to process just the big, huge energy that the divine is, our little brains are turned to jelly and leak out barriers. So we then personify them into the dual aspect of the god and the goddess, and underneath those umbrella terms are the different deities who are one and the same. But if you want to work with a particular energy, then you would pick a particular deity to work with that is just one aspect of the goddess.
That expression of that, yeah.
Because you break the goddess down into the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Again, 3 different aspects. And you can break the crone down into different aspects. You know, like Hecate could be seen as an aspect of the crone, but in a particular way. Like, she can be quite vindictive. She can be a badass bitch. If you want to do a bit, you know, want to get really powerful and send and it's just really good for using it for protection and stuff like that. Invoking those particular energies of this wise woman that knows all and will take no shit, then you can use that. And you can break the goddess down into the Oak King and the Holly King and the battle that they have. And then you can break like the Oak King even further into aspects like Pan and people like that. And it's just all about knowing what you want to do, and if using those deities to help you focus your intention and focus your energy, then use them. But I don't particularly do, because I don't feel the need to need those to assist in my focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do. And it's kind of how I have Gaia as the person who's center on my altar, because she to me is all encompassing. You know, she's Mother Nature, she's Mother Earth. But I still bring out my little goddesses for each of the Sabbats, but it's the same goddess, you know, with different representation on it. I suppose it's similar to, you know, the Hindu pantheon. You know, I always remember somebody saying to me once, well, there's 250,000 different gods and goddesses within the Hindu faith, and there isn't. You know, again, there's certain deities and incarnations, and that's why the skin turns blue, because they've been incarnated from another, and they are characteristics, energies, expressions and aspects of the divine. And you're absolutely right. You know, we connect with certain aspects of the divine at certain times, so it's nice to have a form that you can focus your practice around. With that in mind, sorry, Dan, was you going to say something?
And also, just because these deities are taken from history and from different pantheons, doesn't mean you can't pick your own deities that embody certain aspects of the divine energy. Like if you're into a particular fantasy series, for example, whether it be Lord of the Rings or Warhammer, and there's characters out of that fantasy series or that series of books that you can see these particular traits in, there's no reason not to invoke that energy in your work or your spellcraft, because it's what you relate to, and that's where the most power comes from. Using deities is a very personal thing, and no one should say this is wrong or that is wrong. You know these, and especially when it's from books as well, when you're reading it from books, you're creating this image in your brain with your will. And why not use that in your ritual and in your spellcraft? Because you've created it inside your brain, inside your consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've been here a couple of times. Above my front door, I have an amulet of Ganesh, because, you know, the story of Ganesh standing guard, you know, and the removal of obstacles. And I just, he isn't the full expression of my understanding and my belief of a divine source, but it's an element I want to draw on for a particular part of my spiritual practice. So tell us a little bit about your practice then, your actual practice. So I can see behind you, you've got a sacred space. Do you revere the Sabbats, or let's put the camera on you so we can have a closer.
Okay. So you can't really see it. It's been changed. It's gone very back to basics. It was a little bit better for Samhain, and it's gone very back to basics. There's a bit, I won't show you too much because there's a bit of, there's a sigil there, there's a candle there, there's a bit of spellcraft going on, or there will be a bit of spellcraft going on. It's all prep for that. But on there, I have a couple of crystals. I have, in fact, I'll get them. I have a representation of the male and female aspects of the divine. So I said I don't use deities, but I like to have a representation of the god and the goddess. So this is my goddess. Oh, where is she? There's the middle.
That's beautiful.
So she's there. She's got a pentagram in her belly. She's got boobies. She's got massive hips. You know, it's a proper female figure, and with the flowers going up her. And this is my representation of the god.
Wow.
It's the traditional horn god, and he's got a quartz penis. Everyone loves the quartz penis. But again, because of it embodies that sexual energy. So I have both of those on here. There's bits and bobs on here. I always have either a tarot deck or an oracle deck on there. There's no deck on there. Oracle deck on there at the moment. It's the Everyday Witch Oracle. And there's also an oracle card that I get from the moon box. That's on there. There's bits and bobs. There's there's a little item from Egypt, a tiny little scarab that I bought in Egypt. Tiny little scarab that I bought in Egypt, which is amazing. So yeah, there's a few bits. There's some salt on there as well, some sacred salt. There's a few bits and bobs, but the entire cupboard underneath is chocker with supplies. I mean, chocker. There's so much stuff in there. It's unreal. Because my practice is a bit hit and miss at times. I like to honor the Sabbats. I like to honor the wheel of the year as it goes around, because it reminds me of passing of time, and you know, we use these events to mark the passage of time. So I like to honor that. I don't do masses. I wish I did more. But again, it's a time frame thing, but you don't need a lot of time. I'm sort of a bit of I do what feels right when it feels right, if that makes sense. So, like, it all depends on what I need to do and what I want to do and what I am trying to work towards, if that makes sense. So at the moment, there's something set up there. It's about prosperity. So it's a prosperity ritual that I am going to set up as we get to the darkest part of the year, and we encourage the sun back into the world, and the birth of the sun back into the world. We are hoping for a prosperous following year. So that's why it's all getting ready for that. So there's a little bag in there, a green bag, green for prosperity. There's a piece of citrine in there, which will go on the charging plate very soon. The candle has got a green tinge to it again. So all this type of stuff, you weave it all together, and it creates this amazing goo of magic.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. And the Holly King and the Oak King are about to go into battle again. And I can remember when you moved into your apartment and you did some ritual around, you know, the space that you was going to be occupying, and you involved your flatmate in that. And yeah, so I get what you mean about doing things as and when rather than prescribed set times, and that works clearly. I saw a question come in from Forever Wear, who said, could you talk a little bit about sigils and where you developed them from?
Okay, I'm really lazy. So I will I've had sigils come to me in my subscription box that artists have created. So I'll show you the sigil that's here. Now, this is the sigil here. that is used for prosperity. Now, that is clearly some sort of astrological thing. I don't know astrology at all, so I couldn't tell you what it is. So someone has created this, and the intention has gone into this to create this sigil. You can, and sigils can be created for anything, and it's about creating the intention. You can use pre-made sigils, or you can create your own sigils. I've got some tiny little easel boards, which my intention was to like create my own sigils and paint them on them. So these tiny little sort of canvas boards that I got. They actually got these with the little easels that the cards are resting on. Amazing. £1 for a little easel and a canvas board. I was going to use the canvas boards for creating sigils. Not done it yet, but you can get a load of inspiration for sigils from places like Pinterest, from just Google. You can make your own. I saw that it popped up that someone said that's the astrological symbol for Jupiter. I'm not massively into astrology. I couldn't say how that links in with prosperity, but there's lots of different ways you can incorporate sigils. You could do something called free writing or free drawing. Oh, Jupiter is abundance. There we go. See, so that makes perfect sense in a prosperity ritual to have that essence there. But you could do free writing or free drawing to create sigils. You meditated on your intention of what you wanted and then did a bit of free drawing and then use what you've done to create a sigil with it. There's no reason that wouldn't work. There's so many different ways. And the great thing, or in my opinion, the great thing about witchcraft is it is about harnessing your own intention. Never let anyone tell you that a particular thing is wrong, because it's not. It's all about your personal connection with the divine and with the energy that connects everything together. And don't listen to the dogmatic the dogmatic views of other people when they say you must do it this way, you must do it that way. Some people will tell you you must cast a circle before you do any magic. Why? What are you scared of? We're all part of nature and all part of this world. And they say, well, you must cast a circle because it protects you. Why do I want to be protected from the world? Why do I want to be protected from the energies around us? I want to grab those energies and harness them and chuck them back out there. So I'm a bit, and there are people who say that is wrong and it shouldn't be done that way. And I'm like, oh, wow, whatever. I'm still here. I've not died. So you keep your circle, and that works for you and makes you feel good, then that's fine. I don't feel like I need it. I want to harness all this stuff around me. And
yeah. And you're right, people who are saying those things is because that's a very important aspect of their practice and their belief. And again, they might be a follower of a particular sect of witchcraft where that is a requirement. But
exactly.
it's
exactly. I mean, and people that come to things like witchcraft later in life have usually left another, not always, but sometimes have left another religious background to come to witchcraft. They felt like they weren't fitting in there. But the perception that there must be rules, there must be structure is comforting to people. And people like to have, this is how I do it and this is where I do it. I must study for a year and a day and I must do it this way. And it makes them feel comfortable. And if that helps them to harness their intention, then that's great. And that's perfect for them. For me, I'm a bit more free-flowing.
Yeah. I'm the same. And I have been, within religions, as you know, that has been very straight and narrow. But even though I've turned away from that, there's elements of my former practices. My practice is a bit of Buddhism, a bit of Christianity, a bit of paganism. And it works for me, and it helps me to feel centered and grounded, but also connected to something greater. And I think it was Billy who said, you do you and all that. It's we need to come to that place where and most of us, particularly in this community, what I've seen, are coming to that place where we're all encompassing. And it's great. I've interviewed so many people now on my channel from all different parts of the world, following all different practices. But as you said, when you get right down to it, there is that common sorry?
Common denominator.
Yeah, well, just kind of, you know, there's that source. The source is always the same. It's we just use different words or we express it in a different way through a different type of practice. But
I
you know,
remember that religion and spirituality is not directly sent to us from the divine via email or fax. It's man's interpretation of the divine. And
yeah,
every religious text is man's writings on the divine. It's not what the divine is actually telling us, it's our interpretation.
exactly, exactly. And you know, as long as we're all living a life where we feel that we're connected in some way, then for me, that's just as important. Okay, so just before we move on from spiritual practices, what do you enjoy most about the path that you walk? If you could just say one thing that you enjoy most about your practice.
Ooh, one thing, the surprises. And
Oh,
I'm going to have to elaborate on that.
that was surprising.
The surprises. I like the fact that even now in my mid-30s, I can still be surprised by my path. I can go places, I'm gonna, you know, into nature, and it feels like the divine is still giving me a slap on the ass, going, "Oh, pay attention to what we're saying to you. Listen in. Real life's taking over." And I've always said to you as well, when I use tarot and when I use divination, I'm not a cuddly, fluffy person. I like a smack on the arse deck, because the divine will always give you a smack on the arse when life gets a bit too hectic. The divine gives you tough love. And I like that, coming from a family where there have been very strong matriarchal figures and a very northern family. So in the north of England, very strong women. A smack on the ass when you need one was quite common growing up, and it's generally when you are allowing things to get out of control. And
Can I just say as well, sorry to troll, but could you have even said that more northern if you tried?
not more northern. What did I say? It was really northern.
Smack on the arse. How did you do it again?
I'm not saying smack on the ass again, but it's true though. You know, sometimes in life you need it, and it's generally when your head's up your ass and it's all like, oh, the divine, and will give you that if you listen to it. If you listen and you open your eyes and you open your ears and you open your heart and your mind, they'll do that when you need it. So yeah, that's what surprises me most about my spiritual practice, that I still get these slap on the arse moments when I need them, and also that they pop up and show themselves in weird and wonderful ways and weird and wonderful signs that is still surprising even in my mid-30s.
Yeah, yeah, great. And you touched on tarot there, which I'm glad, because we've been on for coming up to an hour and we haven't even talked tarot yet. But
Oh,
now
it's good.
it flies, doesn't it? It's absolutely this. I don't know what happens with time. Does that whole weird timey-wimey thing when we start chatting. So clearly, tarot plays an important role for you in your practice. Firstly, just because I love to know this question, and I probably get people say, "Oh, he always asks that," but it's because I always find it fascinating. How did tarot first come into your life? What's your earliest memory of it?
My earliest memory is looking at or watching my nan read for herself.
Wow.
I've been obsessed with these cards and these pictures, and I must have been about 7, 8, maybe 9. I know I wasn't a teenager yet, and I hadn't started high school yet, and I was obsessed with these things that she was using. I was like, "Oh, I want to learn." And she always used, every year she used to get, she used to call it her almanac, and I can't remember who produced it, but it was a paper book that she'd keep for the year. And then she wouldn't let me read it, and I was obsessed with it. And then she was like, "Well, you can look at the pictures, but you can't use them." I was like, "Right." So because I couldn't use them, I was like, "Well, I want to use them." So I drew my own, and I made my own tarot deck. Now it was only, she only used to use, or I remember it was only the majors, or what I learned to be only the majors. So
Was
I
it Marseille then? Was it a Marseille deck? Can you remember?
can't remember what style of deck it was, whether it was a JJ Swiss, whether it was an RWS. I can't remember. I remember sitting down with paper and drawing these images and drawing the death card, drawing the tower card. And I remember colouring them in with my felt tips and cutting them out and sticking them with a Pritt stick onto a cereal box so they didn't fall apart. And the backs of the cards had like the cereal box on them, it's like Frosties or Rice Krispies or whatever it was. And I kept them for a couple of years, and I kept them wrapped up with an elastic band, and they got battered. But because I'd done that, she then started talking to me about each card and telling me the meanings of each card, and how what they mean. And I must have drawn myself 2 or 3 decks as my understanding and my little tiny child brain started to grow up to a teenager. And I remember getting my first deck around 14 or 15, and it was a gift from my nana. I think it was a 1 JJ Swiss that I got as my first deck. I remember looking at the images going, mine are better. Like mine have mean more to me, and I understand them more than these. I obviously knew like what the tower meant and what the my brain's going mad, what the high priestess meant and all these different things. But I remember thinking, but they don't look like the people in my head. They don't look like the archetypes that are in my head. And that's how I connected to the tarot initially, is because the archetypes of the major arcana were real stories and real people that I created in my head as a child.
Wow. Do you still have that deck?
No, I've got no idea where it is. I've got no idea where any of them are. I just think when my nan finally passes away, I can imagine going through boxes and finding them. I hope so. I really hope she's kept them somewhere. That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. So how do you use the tarot? How do you use it as part of your practice?
I'm a little bit lazy at the moment, and that's probably because life sort of taken over. I generally pull an oracle card a week just to give me a feel of what I need to do. I will usually use the tarot if I've got a proper question to ask. If I need something a bit more detailed, if I need an answer to a particular question or a particular problem, that's when I will generally use the tarot. And it may be about twice a month I sort of consult it. I'm not as religious, for want of a better term, as other people using the tarot. I'll pick them up and say, come on, this is going on. What do I do with this situation? And I'll literally do 3 cards and read them as together. That's the way I prefer to do it. I can do year ahead spreads if I wanted to. I can do, I know the Celtic cross spread like everyone else does. You've got obviously 3 cards draws where you can have past, present, future, or situation, response, things that you can decide how you want to do the spreads. But I'm aware of the traditional spreads, Celtic cross, the wheel of the year spread. I don't have a tarot journal, and I've never used a tarot journal because I've never tracked what they've been saying, because I've never needed to. Every time I read them, they're always on point to the current situation. And I'm not one of these people that goes, tell me what my future holds. I don't want to know that. And I can change whatever's going to happen in the future. I'm in charge of my own life. I don't need the cards to tell me what's going to happen. I'll tell myself what's going to happen, and I'll make it happen. So generally it's to get a question to an answer of a problem that I'm facing, to give me another perspective, to use them as a mirror to my own consciousness, if that makes sense. But I don't do it every day.
Yeah. And that kind of voids out my next question, really, because I kind of use tarot the same way. For me, it's more about that mirror and looking within and finding the answers from within by having a tool that helps me to do that. But at the same time, I will do spreads like I created my 2020 vision, and we talk about the year ahead spread. But I still kind of see that as in, okay, in January, I'll look out for this, and then my response in January, as will dictate. Do you believe that the tarot can predict the future?
I don't believe the tarot can. I believe individuals do have precognition. And again, the tarot is a mirror to your own precognition. The tarot is just a mirror. That's all it is. It's a mirror to your consciousness. And people do have, or I believe, that people have the ability of precognition. Doesn't mean it's destiny and it's set in stone, but I believe it's a mirror to our own consciousness and to our soul, for want of a better term.
Yeah. Okay. And what does your tarot collection look like in terms of size, genre, system?
So I am not, since so I spoke earlier about the fact that I sort of left my spiritual practice for a couple of years and it sort of nosedived a little bit. Before that, I must have only had 1 or 2 tarot decks that have since long disappeared. And I think the reason that I left my spiritual life behind is when I started working at the police, surprisingly, because I had to have this focused, logical brain and not allow intuition or feelings to become involved. And I think that was to the detriment of my spirituality. So when I came back to the tarot and back to my spiritual practice, I've sort of grabbed it and ran with it and gone a little bit crazy. And I've discovered that my inkling for tarot, I like things that are not always the standard traditional RWS or standard traditional Marseille. I like stuff that are a bit different and a bit edgy and that are very nature focused and very pagan focused and very witchy focused. That's sort of where my interest in tarot and oracle sort of go down that road. Yeah, so I've got a couple of decks: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 or 14 decks, tarot decks. I've got more oracle than tarot, because I'll see an oracle, I'm like, yep, buy. Whereas tarot, I've got to really like it. So I always seem to be late to the party with decks because I have to, because I use, so I'll pull an oracle card a week just to sort of give me a feel of, what I need to be thinking about this week. And oracle cards to me are like t-shirts. You can put them on and take them off as and when the mood takes you. Where tarot for me, because it's a mirror to my soul, it's a bit more personal, so I've got to really like it. So most of my decks are slightly, have a basis in RWS, but have a more pagan, witchy feel. Except I've just ordered only yesterday the This Might Hurt tarot because I love the artwork. I have been watching people's unboxings and people's reviews, and I'm like, I love the artwork. So I think that's going to be my most purest RWS themed deck or RWS style deck that I've actually got in my collection.
Oh, wow. Wow. And I'm all about that. So you talked about oracle, and I like the way you described that, actually, about oracle being a bit like a t-shirt that you can put on and pull off, but that going deeper with the tarot. It's very similar to how I view things. And I think you was the first person, Dan, who put Ogham on my radar back end of last year. So you use many forms of divination. Would you say tarot is your preference, or is it something else?
Tarot is my preference because it's always been around, but as I've learned more about divination systems, I've worked with runes and the Futhark runes. My pronunciation of like the runic system is shocking. I've got a set of Oghams. I've got a set of Witches runes, which is slightly different to Futhark runes. I've got Oghams. I've got tarot. I've got oracle. I've got all sorts of different things. I would love, and I've noticed this watching other people's channels. I want a bone casting set. I've got no idea how to read them. I've got no idea how to use them, but they look so cool. And I want a bone casting set.
It's all about the aesthetic. No, I'm kidding.
If it resonates with you on that level, it can sort of unlock that emotional response. It's going to give results. So I want one because they look cool, but then I would need someone to teach me how to use a bone casting set.
Yeah,
amazing.
And that's same with Ogham. My Ogham set that I've got, is smell of them is very tactile. They look amazing, and so therefore it draws you in, doesn't it? That's why we like beautiful tarot decks.
Exactly.
If the deck is really ugly, it's still a tarot deck. It's still got the archetypes there, but we are drawn in through the senses, and sight
And
being one of them.
it gives you a better reading.
Yeah, absolutely. Robin just asked about your tattoos. So he said, are any linked to your spiritual practice?
No, at the moment they're not. So all of my tattoos were obtained when I was in the army, and all of them were obtained when I was drunk, which is really terrible. I do not regret any of them because they remind me of amazing times in my early adult life when I was so carefree and I could spunk £600 away in a weekend. You know, those amazing times. What?
You could what?
You know, when you spunk 600 quid away, you would just throw it away. Peter the wall. Have you never heard that term before?
That would be a northern expression as well.
I spent £600 in a weekend and not care because life was amazing and I was carefree. So they're all from the military, my military days. I have one which, this is how bad it is. I have a Chinese character on my back, which means dangerous, and it does mean dangerous, thankfully. It doesn't mean like sweet and sour chicken or anything like that. I also have my surname in Arabic on my lower back. I do want to get more tattoos, and I do want to. Now I'm getting to an age where I'm a bit more grown up about body art. I want more body art. I want more piercings, but I am thinking a bit more about them. So some of these tattoos may end up getting covered. So I want a Manchester B in my forearm because I'm back in my home city, and the B is very important to Manchester. But I want it. I want its thorax, its bum, in the Pride colours, for obvious reasons, because there's the Pride Bee on Canal Street, which is the heart of the gay village of Manchester. My surname that's in Arabic at the bottom of my back, I want that framed, but it'll have to be framed in like Arabic style, sort of henna, Punjabi style, sort of that type of framing, so it fits with the aesthetic. So the more, now I'm older, I think I can make better decisions in relation to body art than I did when I was in my early 20s. I just thought it was amazing, but I don't regret any of them.
Yeah, cool. That's a relief, being as they were all kind of done under the influence. I just wanted to talk briefly about, because you've moved quite recently, and for me, going down to the Wiltshire area and seeing where you used to live in terms of Stonehenge and Avebury and all these cool places, what is the witchy pagan tarot scene like where you are now that you're up north?
So Manchester, I live in a town about 6 miles outside of the city. So I don't actually live in the city. Manchester's a very small city. It's actually two cities next to each other, the city of Manchester and the city of Salford, and they're very small. They're only a couple of square miles each, separated by a river. So it's two cities next to each other, surrounded by towns that form the greater Manchester area. So I live in the southeast of the city, or the east of the city. And my town is 6 miles from the city centre and is in the foothills of the Peak District. So literally 10 minutes up the road and I'm in the Peak District. Half an hour's drive or 25 minutes on the tram, I'm in the city centre. The Manchester is a really vibrant, cool, happening, eclectic city. It always has been, and I think it always will be. And there's a very deep subculture in Manchester. It's not even a subculture, it's just so in your face and out there. Like this amazing shopping precinct called Affleck's Palace, which sells everything from cyber goth to Victorian goth to punk kid to house techno dance clothing. It just is, it's mind blowing. Like you could get a set of wings, full size wings made with real feathers in Affleck's Palace. You know, it's just this mental place where you can buy absolutely everything. And you can get tarot, and you can get all sorts of divination systems there. You can get a tattoo there. You can get your nose pierced there. It's just amazing. There's vegan food stalls inside it. It's just this amazingly funky place. But that sort of culture is all through the city. I've not actively looked to see whether there is any witchy tarot-y communities, and I haven't been shopping in the city for anything like that yet. But I'm not far from Pendle. You know, Pendle's only an hour and a bit up the road. There's all these different places. Blue John Mines is in the South Yorkshire South Yorkshire Dales. We can get the Blue John crystals, which are supposed to be quite powerful and magical. There's all these different places around it, and it's very harsh. The people are very rugged. It's an amazing place. It's very cool. I like it.
And it reminds me, before I lived here, I lived 20 minutes from here, but also 20 minutes from the Derbyshire part of the Peak District. And you could take Snake Path up into Manchester.
Yeah, Snake Pass is literally the road from my house runs up to Snake Pass.
Wow. So yeah, and I love that part of the world. There's so many amazing places. Any favorite hangouts? Any favorite haunts?
So I really like, as you mentioned, Snake Pass. I really like Snake Wood, which is it's in like a bit of a dale and a bit of a valley along Snake Pass. You can park up and walk into Snake Wood, which is beautiful. It's stunning. Like you go from this rugged environment, climbing over tree roots, to these beautiful rivers, meandering rivers in massive glades. It's just mental. It's so amazing. Then you've got the other side of it, and you're on a rugged hillside again, and it's all within like the space of like 3 miles. It's like this microclimate in the Peak District. So I do like Snakewood. Snakewood is a particular favourite place of mine.
Yeah. And for those watching in who probably from overseas, I think Dan and I, even though I keep referring to him as being up north, and because I'm in the Midlands, we're probably what, an hour and a half away from each other?
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
About an hour and a half.
Now, down where I live now, it's about an hour and a half from you.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
not that far, is it? So yeah. Oh, cool. Okay, so we are coming towards the end. So a few deeper questions now. I like to go deep just before we close. Oh yes, and Shanti Diva has asked twice now, so I do apologise. I did write it down. She just wanted to see the cards that were on your altar. You made reference to them earlier.
So this is the one that I got from the Witch's Moon box. I got that in November.
Let's make it bigger for people to see.
Some animal deck. I can't remember. If Twist the Leaf is in the chat, he knows which deck this is from. But the card I got from the Witch's Moon is Gaia, and it says harmony, abundance, wholeness, and forgiveness. Because I get an oracle card through my subscription box every month, they pull a card for me and put it in the box. I keep that on my altar for the month, just as a thing to think about and to focus on. I literally changed this and pulled this earlier today. So this is my next card for the week. This is from the Everyday Witch Oracle. And I got Meditation to Dig Deep. One other thing, I'm going to give a shout out to this deck because I've been using this deck for a couple of weeks now. And every time you pull an Oracle card, they have tells you about the card, gives you a bit of a meaning about the card, something to do with the card, but it also gives you a little section called Magic, where you can actually do some things that invokes the energy of the card in your sort of practice. It's a brilliant deck. Absolutely love it. If you're new to Witchcraft or new to Tarot or new to Oracle, this deck ticks all the boxes because it gives you a little bit of something to do. I read this morning, and it's something to do with that getting some earth and getting it on the altar. I need to read it again, but it's something that I like to do, and I've started to do that with these cards. So they're actually quite cool to use in your home practice. Amazing deck.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing them with us. And Shanti Diva has those decks, so and she was the one that asked if she could see them. So Dan, what would you say your practice has taught you most about yourself?
It's taught me I can be a little bit too spontaneous in what I do in life, and my practice generally tries to rein me in and generally tries to ground me. I think that it helps to ground me because I am a very typical Scorpio, a very typical water sign. I am ruled by my emotions, and that can sometimes be to my detriment. More often than not, that's to my detriment. And my practice, I find, does bring me back to earth and does ground me, and I think that's why it's good for me.
Cool. Great answer. And then if you could go back in time and change something, or forward in time so you could see that you need to change something now, Which would you go for and why?
I'd go forward in time.
You would?
Yeah, I wouldn't go back, because everything that I've done, all the crap that I've had to wade through in my life has made me who I am today. And I quite like who I am. So I wouldn't want to change something, because I'd end up being different now. But if I could go forward and see something that's going to come up, if it's amazing, I can work towards it. If it's terrible, I can now start to make changes to stop it from happening.
Ooh, yeah. I'm just terrified of going forward. I'm just like, what if it's just something I can't control, and then I'm always knowing that this is coming? I don't know. The future scares me a little bit.
The very fact that you know it's coming means it's not predetermined to happen anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I need to think on that a bit more.
You know what I mean? It's like precognition. If you think something's going to happen, you can either do nothing and let it happen. But the fact that you know it's going to happen means it's no longer predetermined, because of the fact that you already know. So it'll start. Yeah. So I would go forward.
So can I ask then, because you just said as well, you're quite a spontaneous person, and from what I know of you, I would agree with that. So would you say that you're more of a in the moment person, or are you somebody who plans for the future?
Definitely. I mean, obviously I do plan for the future, and I have goals and I have targets, but I'm definitely a live in the moment person. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed for anybody. And I don't have any regrets in life. Everything happens for a reason, and I have learned a lot from things. So I do never ever want to have any regrets. So if something pops up and it's an opportunity that sounds like it's going to be fun, let's have fun. Let's do it. You know, that's what life's about. My nana at the moment, bless her, she's in her late 80s, and it's almost like she's fallen out with her money, because she seems to be spending it like it's going out of fashion. And we keep saying, why do you keep spending all the money? Well, I can't take it with you. And she gave me some money the other day. I was like, I don't need it. You might as well have it now, because if you get it when I die, the taxman will take it. And it's like, she's very much a live in the moment person. But she's a very different type of person to me. She's a Taurus. But I'm definitely a live in the moment type person. Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, me too. So Dan, because you are my last interviewee of the year, any 2020 visions?
In what respect?
Well, it could be for your channel, it could be part of your things you want to achieve in the year, work related, home life, your practice, any visions that you're aiming for 2020?
So 2020 is the year that I'm going to be buying my bike. I wanted it this year, but circumstances didn't allow me to actually have it. So it's definitely
in your test.
I passed my test a year ago, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I passed my test a year ago. So I've not had a bike, unfortunately, because I know which one I want. It has to be perfect. It has to be beautiful. I know, and he's going to be my little boy. It's going to be amazing. So I've got to have. It's got to be right. It's got to be perfect. And it would be so good to have him this year. I want the channel to grow, and I am starting to think about where it's going to go, because it needs to sort of. I can't just keep doing unboxings forever. You know, that's not what I came onto YouTube to do. But it's a nice way to get used to being on the camera, to be involved with people. And I think recently the channel has started to go the direction it was meant to go at the start. It started to go along the way I wanted it to go, about discussing difficult things and things that are important, because I've got loads of opinions and loads of thoughts about these things, and I can come at it from a unique perspective. So yeah, I think the channel's slowly going to where it needs to go. But that's basically it for what's going to happen in 2020. I try not to plan too much, because I've got no idea what's going to happen. My life could change in an instant tomorrow. For example, I could win the lottery and be a millionaire tomorrow. I don't play the lottery, but you know, my grandma does. And if she wins the lottery, I'll end up being. She will look after her family, and I could be in a position that my entire life has changed. So I try and plan a little bit, but not too much, because life can do all sorts of cool, wonderful things to you. So we'll just see what happens.
Certainly can. Yeah. And yeah, I agree. I think there, as I said earlier, there is a gap in the community for your content as well. So I'm excited. I'm excited for it. And I know your 2021 vision.
My 2021 vision.
I know your 2021 vision. Oh, look at that blanket expression. New York, hello.
New York.
Oh my goodness. Yes, you said, do you fancy going to New York, Simon?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot all about that. I was thinking, what's he going about? Has he been drinking?
In earnest here, and you're like, New York? What?
Yeah, oh yeah. I've not been back to New York in years. Last time I went to New York was about 5 years ago. I'd love to go to New York again.
Well, I only got to the airport, so.
It's amazing.
Okay, and Billy said, paper or plastic? You can't go without playing paper or plastic. We are playing paper or plastic, yeah. Can't not, unless the person I'm interviewing really didn't want to do it. So, are you ready, Dan, to play paper or plastic? So, you've seen this? You know how it works?
I know how this works, yeah. I've seen this before.
So, just the first thing that comes into your mind. So, first to kick us off, as always, is paper or plastic?
Paper.
Oracle or tarot?
Tarot.
YouTube or Instagram?
Instagram.
Peanut butter or jam?
Peanut butter.
Big parties or small gatherings?
Small gatherings.
Really? That's surprising. Waite or Crowley?
Ooh. Wait.
Bath or shower?
Bath.
Bordered or borderless?
I have neither a preference for them.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference to me whatsoever.
Dark and creepy or rainbows and butterflies?
Dark and creepy.
Indie or mass?
Indie.
Tablet or PC?
Tablet.
Save or spend?
Spend.
Money or free time?
Free time.
Phone calls or, I'm going to say FaceTime, but it's like Glide or, you know, Skype. Movies at home or in the cinema?
Ooh, in the cinema.
Large cards or small cards?
Small cards, because they're easy to shuffle.
Life after death or total oblivion?
Life after death.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
You get up at 3:30 in the morning.
It doesn't mean I like it.
Woodland forests or sandy beaches?
Woodland forest.
Toilet rolls hanging over or under?
Over.
And I call you a friend.
It's just the way it goes. It's the patent shows you it's over.
Patent was made up because they can find another patent where it hangs under. Just saying. Just saying. There is a Photoshop. So okay. So we're coming to the end. It's nearly 25 past. I'm going to pull a card. I'm going to put it from my latest deck, which is the Wheel of Fortune Tarot. While I'm shuffling and pulling a card down, do you want to talk to us about a favorite deck of yours at the moment and why, and show a few cards?
So the deck I am loving at the moment is, it'll come as no surprise to people who have this. It's the forest. It's the tarot of the Enchanted Forest. The tarot of the Enchanted Forest. I keep calling it the Enchanted Forest Tarot. It makes no difference. The reason I love this deck is because it gave me such feels for how little Dan was growing up. Like the fairies in the garden and the tree spirits. It just made me feel, it really allowed me to connect back with sort of my, I suppose, inner child in a way, but it also gives you that smack on the arse, which I'd like. It just is such an amazing deck. Some of these images, I mean, most of these images are just incredible. And it is like, it's so cool. It's such a cool deck. Also, some of the cards have been changed. The names of some of the cards have been changed. But that doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that there isn't, the death card has been changed to the Black Shuck, or it doesn't bother me about these changes, because I quite like that about a deck when they sort of stray from the beaten path. But yeah, it just gives me all my little childhood fantasy dreams about what the world was like around me. And it's just an amazing deck. I think it's incredible. I love this deck and I love working with it. And it is giving me, I mean, look at that. That is so Snow Queen in Narnia vibe. Yeah. Like, she's going to offer you the Turkish delight and like steal you away from your family. You know, and she's the weaver of challenges, which, and it doesn't bother me that they've changed the suits or they've changed the names of some of the majors. It doesn't bother me whatsoever, because it gives you such vibes that I remember as a kid. It allows me to, and it reminds me of being a kid. So that at the moment is my current favorite deck. It's still not my favorite deck. It does come in as a close second, though.
Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah, and I love that deck. It is. I did my top 5 decks of 2019, and that was one of them. It's really, really wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So just before, and thank you for showing us those, Dan, and talking to us about your reason why you like that deck so much. Just before we go, and before I do the card reading, again, please do check out Dan's channel. There is a link in the description below, because as you can see, you know, he's just such a joy to listen to. I mean, I can not like that accent, the way he says arse. You did it again when you were talking there. I was not going to comment. But
now I'm living back up north. I can switch into my BBC voice if I need to, but yeah, it's sort of like, yeah, smack on the arse. It's just,
yeah, you did it more Wiltshire then. You got to do the real.
Sorry. It's because I'm thinking about it. It's because I'm thinking about it. If I just say it, it'll just come out normally. I'll try. I'll say it now because I'm thinking about the word arse. It's just like arse.
So is it good to be home? Are you glad that you're back in where your roots are from?
I am glad to be back in the north of England. Luckily, I'm far enough away from my family where they can't just drop in. So I'm a good 25, 30 minutes drive from the town I was born in, where all my family live from. So there's my town where I live now, and then another town north of me, and then their town that they live in north of that. So it's a good half-hour drive. A lot longer, can be up to 45 minutes with traffic. So they can't just knock on the door and turn up when they want. So none of them have a key. If they want to come round, they have to make an appointment. So I'm close enough to be close to them, but far enough away. So, because I've never lived with or around them my adult life, so I'm super independent. But that's their fault anyway. They made me independent, so they've got to like live with the consequences.
Cool, and that's a good safe distance.
Very good.
Okay, so our card for the week then is, the 8 of Wands. We have the 8 of Wands. So message for this week for the 8 of Wands would be, don't go rushing in without making sure that you've got all your priorities sorted first. There can be that temptation this week that things have got to happen swiftly. And while swift action may be required, just make sure that you've got all your ducks lined up, that you've thought things through. So you don't want to be in a situation where you rush in haste and repent at leisure, as the saying goes. Make sure you've had some time to take stock, to reevaluate what's happening, and then consider the direction that you want to move in. So the 8 of Wands is always talking to us about that swift action, but it also gives us that warning as well, that while swift action may be required, there's also some legwork that needs to take place first. So make sure your ducks are lined up. Think first, and then, yeah, swift action is required, but not just rush in without thinking of what the consequences might be, or thinking about what your needs are in this present moment. So just keep that in mind through the week ahead. Dan, thank you so much for being a guest. I think yours is the one we've been trying to sort out the longest. This is, like I say, a year in the making and in discussion, but you've been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thank you. And I'll put the link to your channel again. So yeah, do check out Dan's channel. Any ideas of what you're going to do next, or your next live, or anything like that you want to promote while you're here?
Nothing in the pipeline at the moment. I was thinking the other day about doing something next week in the run up to Yule, but I've not fully realised what I want to do yet. So I'm not sure if it's going to be pre-recorded, whether it's going to be live, or whether there's going to be sort of a Yule themed chat, maybe. I don't know yet. I'll have to wait and see. It's a super busy time of year with the winter festival that different people celebrate. So I'll see what happens. There'll be something soon. I'll probably definitely do an unboxing of This Might Hurt How when it arrives. I know everyone's done one, but I'll do one.
Doesn't matter. I think that's a common misconception. I often hear people say, oh, I was going to do a walkthrough of this, but other people have done it. The reason I look at multiple ones is because I love to see what other people think of my favorite decks, or if I'm about to choose, I'm thinking of choosing a deck to buy, I look at multiple channels and multiple viewpoints, particularly if I feel that we have similar tastes and styles. So please do it. Something around Yule would be brilliant in terms of your ritual and your practice. That would be awesome too. But
still trying to figure out how to get a bonfire into the house. You're supposed to have a bonfire at Yule. It's traditional to have a big bonfire. So I'm trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to get a bonfire in the house. I've got a few ideas involving my cauldron and stuff, but I still have to play around with them and see whether it burns the house down or not. And after your recent experience, I don't want to start setting things on fire.
Oh dear. Anyway, yeah, we won't go there. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciated it. Thank you to everybody in the chat and for all your questions. There was loads of questions, and I know I am mindful I didn't get through all of them either. Billy said might need to skip the Yule log thing then, Dan. Yeah, thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the moderators as well for all your ongoing help and support with this channel. It's really appreciated. I'm not sure when I'll be back in the week, but next Saturday at 4 p.m. Please join me for our annual Christmas Cup of Ketchup and Cards. It's the third one with the lovely and beautiful Jen from Jennifer Ball's Witch House, who is a really, really lovely friend of mine, and we're going to be coming on together to do something very Christmassy and very festive next week. There'll be giveaways, there'll be games, quizzes, so I hope you can join us for that. So have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Any final words, Dan, before I end the broadcast?
Thank you so much to everyone that's been here. It's been an absolute blast, and thank you, Simon, for interviewing me. I've really enjoyed it, but we could have talked twice as long.
Absolutely. We really, really could have done. We're lucky to get it in just over an hour and a half. But all right then, guys. Thank you. And always remember, go in peace, namaste, and blessed be.